and in the future. We welcome the use of the Welsh language at meetings. I have had no requests for people to speak Welsh today, so this meeting will be conducted in English only. Members of the Chamber, please be aware that we are all on camera and that you may be visible on screen when people around you are speaking, and please remember to speak clearly into your microphones. Members taking part remotely, can you please refrain from using the chat function? Instead, use the raised hand icon to indicate when you would like to speak. Please remember to keep your microphones muted when you are not talking. Right, moving on to the agenda, we go to agenda item 1, which is attendance and apologies. Chris, do you have any apologies, please?
We have, Chair. We've got apologies from Councillors Glyn Cowan, Norma Parish and Chris Tew. Thanks.
Thank you. Agenda item 2, declarations of interest. Members, do you have any interest to declare?
I'm not sure whether I should declare this. My brother runs minibuses. I sometimes do private hire, so
Okay,
in the borough. Yeah.
That's Councillor Evans. Okay.
Thank you.
And then we move straight into agenda item 3, which is minutes to the General Licensing Committee, 25th of November 21, which is on pages 3 to 8. Right, members, could you possibly state whether you have anything to raise in relation to the minutes? If not, I will take them as approved. You all happy to approve the minutes? Okay. And then we'll go on to agenda item 4, which is taxi licence fees following consultation, pages 9 to 16. I'll now hand over to Claire Howells, Team Manager, Licensing and Trading Standards, to deliver the report. Claire?
Thank you, Chair. Would you like me to share the report on the screen?
I think it would be good.
Okay, just bear with me one moment. And can you confirm that you can see the report?
Yes.
Yeah. Brilliant, thank you. So the first report that I have for you this morning is an update following consultation on the proposed taxi licence fees for 2022-2023. The proposed fees have been calculated to represent the actual costs of delivering each licence service based on the best available evidence and information at the time of calculating the fees. In practice, the proposed fees slightly underrepresent the actual costs because officer hourly costs cannot be, for 2022-2023 cannot be calculated yet. Therefore, figures based on 21-22 have been used. Paragraph 3.3 of the report gives you an overview of the number of taxi licences that we currently have in Torfaen at the moment. In November 2021, the committee agreed that taxi licence fees should be consulted upon, and those fees are shown in Appendix 1 of the report. A statutory notice was placed in the local newspaper as required, and in addition, a letter or email was sent to all relevant licence holders along with a copy of the notice. There were no responses received to the consultation, which ended on the 17th of January 2022. A comparison of our fees compared to those in neighbouring authorities are shown in Appendix 2 of the report for information. Members will note that there are some differences between the fees that we are proposing to charge and the fees charged by neighbouring authorities, and the reasons for this is contained in paragraph 4.1.3 of the report. Members were also asked if they wish to consider a reduction in fees for wheelchair accessible vehicles and fully electric vehicles, and it was proposed that a reduction of £80 for new vehicle applications and £70 for renewal applications be put in place. There were no representations to the proposed fees received during the consultation period. Therefore, the proposed fees consulted on will come into effect from the 1st of April 2022. To provide an overview of the consultation process, officers have worked with the finance team to calculate hourly rates, and the report has been reviewed by finance and legal officers. A statutory notice was placed in the local newspaper as required, and either a letter or email was sent to all relevant licence holders along with a copy of the notice. Members are asked to note that the proposed fees consulted on for 2022-2023 will come into effect from the 1st of April 2022 following full consultation, and to note that no representations to the proposed fees were received. Thank you, Chair. That's my first report.
Thank you, Claire. Members, any questions? No questions? Okay. The recommendations are on page 11 of your agenda. Members, do you agree with the recommendations? All those four?
Yep.
Okay. If anybody's against, can you say? No. Nobody abstaining? Okay then, thank you, members. Right, we move straight into agenda item number 5, which is approval of proposed fees 2022-23 scrap metal and trading, animal establishment, licensing and sex establishments, which are on pages 17 to 46 of your agenda pack. All right, once again, Claire, team member, trade licensing and trading standards, will be delivering the report. Claire?
Thank you, Chair. So the second report for approval this morning is in relation to proposed fees for 2022-2023 for scrap metal, street trading, animal establishment licensing and sex establishment licensing. Certain fees are deemed to be non-statutory in that local authorities can determine what or whether to charge. This report, as previously mentioned, refers to scrap metal, street trading, animal establishment licensing and sex establishment licensing. Appendix 1 of the report gives an overview of the background and methodologies used around fee setting, which have previously been agreed by the committee. The calculated fees are intended to be a fair reflection of the actual costs of administering and enforcing each licence, in much the same way as anyone would expect to pay a reasonable price for a service they receive. However, it's not possible to achieve full cost recovery in terms of overall licensing functions because some activities do not relate directly to the administration and enforcement of licenses. The calculated costs are based on budgeted salary costs for 22-23 in line with the Council's medium-term service and financial plan. Paragraph 4 of the report gives you an overview of the general fee setting principles that are used in order to calculate our fees. For each licence type, there are 3 main elements calculated: underpinning costs, which include the costs incurred by the authority to establish policies, procedures, fee setting, etc. The specific licence steps relating to each type of licence, from initial advice through to the administration and approval of that licence, and the hourly operational cost to the authority for each officer. 4.2 of the report refers to scrap metal. The proposed fees for both scrap metal collectors and sites have slightly increased. The proposed fees are attached at Appendix 2 of this report, and a comparison with neighbouring authorities is attached at Appendix 3. It is important to note that these fees are for a 3-year period. At the time of writing this report, we currently had 4 scrap metal sites and 7 collectors licensed by the Council. 4.2.5 gives you an overview of the number of licences in relation to scrap metal that are due for renewal during the 2022-23 period and compares the current fee with the proposed fee. 4.3 of the report relates to street trading. We set 3 different levels of fees, those being for permanent pitch and rounds, short-term and seasonal trading, and single-day trading. Local authorities are not required to do this, but we calculate separate fees to ensure that we are fair to businesses who wish to trade for short periods of time and to encourage applications, reducing the need for enforcement. There are slight increases to the proposed fees for 22-23 to reflect the changes in time to deal with these types of applications. The proposed fees are attached as Appendix 4 of the report, and a comparison with neighbouring authorities attached at Appendix 5. In relation to animal establishment licensing, the types of licences that we issue include boarding, dog breeding and pet shops. Again, although local authorities are not required to do so, separate fees have been calculated to take into account that some businesses are much smaller and less complex than others, and this is intended to be fairer to those licence holders that have smaller operation and to encourage applications. The calculations for zoo licences and dangerous wild animals have been reviewed on the basis of best average estimates, as we currently do not have any licence within Torfaen. These would need to be reviewed again should any applications be received. The calculations show that all proposed fees except for horse riding establishments and zoo licensing have slightly increased. As agreed last year as part of the fee review, if there is a need for a vet to accompany an officer on an inspection, this will continue to be charged separately to the applicant. The proposed fees are attached at Appendix 6 of this report. 4.4.6 gives you an overview of the animal establishment licences which are due for renewal in 2022-2023 and shows a comparison of the current fee and the proposed fee. 4.5 of the report refers to sex establishment licensing. The authority currently has no sex establishment premises, although we have received applications in the past. The proposed fees are therefore based on estimated timings, but would need to be reviewed on the basis of experience should any applications be received in the future. The proposed sex establishment licence fees are attached at Appendix 7 and a comparison table with neighbouring authorities at Appendix 8. 4.6 of the report gives you a general overview of how we calculate our fees. Unless otherwise specified, the following general charges will be made. For a copy of a licence, £25, and any administrative changes to a licence and licence records, £50. In preparing this report, officers have worked with the finance team to establish officer hourly costs, and the report has been approved by finance and legal prior to submission to members. It is recommended that members approve the proposed licence fees, fall into this committee for determination, or if they should not approve the fees, indicate the reasons for not doing so. Thank you, Chair. That's my report.
Thank you, Claire. Members, any questions, comments? No?
Yeah, well, I could ask the chair, has there been any challenge about any increases in some of the costs by anybody?
No, so the fees that this report refers to do not require consultation, but our fees over previous years have not been challenged.
I just wanted to clarify that. I guessed it was, but I didn't know where sometimes you get the odd one would want to challenge and say, well, why are you doing that? But
no.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Evans. Any other comments, questions? No. Okay, then we move to recommendations, which are on page 23 of your agenda. Members, do you all agree with the recommendations? Yes? Anybody against? Just say so.
Forgive me, Chair. The recommendations set out two alternatives. I think what you'll need to do to ensure that the decision is valid is to ask for Chris to ask which each member's needing to are in favour of.
Oh, that's good. I just thought because the one just said if we didn't approve of the fees, it was a majority decision, then we'd automatically have to.
Yes, that's true. That's true. As long as everybody understands it's that stuff.
Just thought I didn't read them out because they've all got the packs.
Yeah.
Members, do you all understand that you actually vote what you're voting on? Okay then, is that okay? Okay.
Yes, that's fine.
That's okay. Right then, members, you all in agreement? Yes. Anybody against? Can you just say so now? No? Anybody abstaining? Okay then, thank you, members. Now we move on to agenda item 6, which is tax conditionality for taxi licences. Right, this time I'm going to ask, these are on pages 31 to 156 in your agenda. So this time I'm going to ask Robin Gray, who's the Senior Licensing Officer, to deliver the report. Robin, could you deliver the report, please?
Yep, thank you, Chair. I'll just bring up the report so everybody can see it. Okay, hopefully that'll be appearing shortly. The government is introducing tax conditionality in April 2022 in order to tackle the hidden economy, which consists of individuals and businesses with sources of taxable income that is entirely hidden from HMRC. It will become a prerequisite from the 4th of April 2022 by virtue of the Finance Act 2021 That will apply to any application for a new Hackney carriage and private hire driver licence, and also any new application for a private hire operator licence. But it will also apply to any application to renew those licences. It will become a condition of applying for the licence, hence conditionality, that in the case of a first-time application, the council will be required to give the applicant information relating to tax compliance and their obligations by directing them to HMRC's guidance that we published on gov.uk, and also to obtain the applicant's confirmation that they understand those obligations. And B, in the case of every renewal application, the council will be required to obtain from HMRC confirmation that the applicant has given HMRC information relating to tax compliance. So with a new applicant, we'll be required to give them information and to obtain written confirmation that they understand their obligations, and we can't proceed with an application until we've had that confirmation. And in the case of any renewal applications, so every 3 years when they come to renew their licence, or 5 years in the case of an operator, the applicant must provide the council with a tax code that they can obtain from HMRC, and then we can verify that they are appropriately registered for tax. When carrying out the tax check, the council will only receive confirmation that the applicant has completed a tax check, meaning that they're appropriately registered for tax and that their income from their licensed activities reported to HMRC. There'll be no financial information provided to the council about income or the amount of tax an applicant pays and whether that is an appropriate amount of tax. This is obviously a new obligation that will apply to every applicant for a driver and operator licence. We have sent correspondence to all existing licence holders to advise them of the introduction of the tax checks from the 4th of April 2022, and we're also adding information to the council's website to assist new applicants and anybody applying to renew a licence. I just thought it would be helpful to share with the committee a presentation we've received from HMRC just to show how this will work in practice, just so the committee can kind of see what drivers will be going through. It isn't discretionary; it is an obligation, a statutory thing that we need to do. But I'll just share the presentation so the committee can see the how the website, what the drivers will go through, operators will go through when they're doing these checks. I'll just put that into presentation mode. Can everybody see the presentation now? Is that available? Yep. Okay. So I've just moved on to the second slide. Hopefully that's moved forward for you. So this is when drivers, operators are applying for the tax check code. They'll first need to apply to register for online services with HMRC. Once they've got their user ID and password, they can go into this website. They'll be asked to enter what type of licence they're applying for, so either a driver licence or an operator licence. This also applies to scrap metal dealers, but that isn't a function of the committee, that's an executive function, so I've not gone through that here today, but obviously drivers, operators, they can tick which type of licence they're applying for. Then I'm on to the third slide, so hopefully that's moving forward for everybody. They will then sort of advise how many years they've held their licence, so either or when they first applied for the licence, for 0 to 2 years ago, between 2 and 4 years ago, between 4 and 8 years and over. They then will advise how long their last licence was valid for, so 1 year, 2 year, etc. Then they will sort of say what type of tax status they had when they were licensed during the last financial year. So either an employee, registered for self-assessment, registered for self-assessment and an employee, or they did not need to tell HMRC about any income. And then they'll answer, did they include income earned using this type of licence in their tax return? I think these questions will be slightly tailored depending on what answers you give. And this is also just a prototype, so this isn't necessarily the final thing, but this is kind of how it is going to look for drivers and operators. And then they'll just look at the answers they've given, confirm the declaration, and then they'll be given a tax code, which is this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 digit code that's valid for 120 days. So once they've they've got plenty of time to generate it. We remind drivers 3 months in advance that their licence is due to expire. So same with operators. So they can generate the code, and then they'll be valid up until the point that they submit the application to us. So that's the sort of information that HMRC will be asking them to answer, the questions they'll be asking them to answer. Once we've got that code from the applicant when they apply to renew their licence, we will then do a tax check, and that is, we would just go into the website, enter the tax check code, say what type of licence the applicant is applying for, whether an individual or a company. In the case of an individual, would give their date of birth. In the case of a company, would probably give their registered business number. And then we just get confirmation that the tax check code is valid. So the conditionality on renewing a license, it's a condition of renewing a license that we get a valid check code from the applicant, and then we do the check online, and once it's confirmed it's valid, then we can proceed with the application. So hopefully everyone's been able to see that that presentation. I'll just go back to the report. As I've said, the tax check is a statutory requirement that will apply to all applicants applying for combined hackney carriage and private hire driver licences or private hire operator licences, and we have no discretion in how or when to implement these new checks, so they must form part of the application procedures for those types of licences from the 4th of April 2022. As the application procedures for these licences are set out in the Council's policy on the administration and regulation of hackney carriage and private hire licences, it's proposed to amend those procedures in Section 2 of the policy for the driver application and in Section 3 of the policy for operator licence applications. For ease of reference, I've included as Appendix 1 to the report the first paragraphs of those two sections with the proposed amendments relating to the tax conditionality check. So they're shown as track changes in the report, which everyone's hopefully had the opportunity to see. So in terms of the driver application, the policy says before a driver's licence is granted, applicants must, and the proposed addition is, acknowledge receipt of any HMRC guidance relating to tax compliance that the applicant is directed to by the council and confirm that they are aware of the contents of that guidance. And any applicant applying to renew a licence after the 4th of April 2022 must complete a tax check and provide the council with a valid tax check code. In terms of the operator licence application procedure, that's in Section 3 of the reports, and the addition is set out again as a track change, and the proposal is that applicants must acknowledge receipt of any HMRC guidance relating to tax compliance that the applicant is directed to by the council and confirm that they are aware of the contents of that guidance. And then any applicant applying to renew a licence after the 4th of April 2022 must complete a tax check and provide the council with a valid tax check code. So that's the proposed amendments to the council's taxi policy. We haven't consulted with the taxi trade on the proposed amendments to the policy or any other persons because it is a statutory requirement, so there's no discretion. If they object, we would have to introduce it anyway. So we've not done that, but we have advised them that the check is coming into place from April onwards. So I'll now move to the recommendations associated with this report, and that's in Section 8, which the recommendation is that the committee resolve to incorporate the proposed changes to Sections 2 and 3 of the Council's policy on the administration and regulation of hackney carriage and private hire licences that are set out in Appendix 1 of the reports with immediate effect. And that's the report, Chair.
Thank you, Robin. Members, any questions, comments on the report? No. Okay, then the recommendations are on page 50 of your agenda. Members, do you agree with the recommendations? All those who's for? Okay, anybody against? Just say so. No. Anybody abstaining? Good then, thank you, members. Then we go to agenda item 7, which is date of the next meeting. For your information, members, the next meeting is scheduled to take place in the new municipal year at the date to be agreed. Thanks, members, for your attendance. That's the end of the meeting.